It has been 5 years since 9/11. Ground Zero remains a place of both loss and rebirth.
The PATH station began to emerge from the rubble and the debris.
The purpose of the work train is to verify some clearances.
You have to go about your daily life, but living and working around here, you'll never forget it.
It's a ton of space. It has to get leased.
It's going to be filled, and it's going to be filled soon, because Larry will not fail.
I understand just how important this memorial is to so many people.
They're now going to pour concrete over where my son was. This is no way to conduct a memorial.
Those folks that come here, they have no idea of what they're looking at. There's nobody there to explain to them. You are going to be that conduit. Somebody will ask about the fire.
I'm going to muddle along. I may cry a lot, but I really want to do this.
This program was made possible by the New York State Department of Transportation, the American Society of Civil Engineers, designers and builders of the quality of life. Muser Rutledge Consulting Engineers, foundation engineering since 1910. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
After September 11th, workers cleared 2 million tons of rubble with picks and shovels and massive machines. They searched for traces of the 2,749 people murdered that day. Fewer than half the victims were ever recovered. The World Trade Center site is at the southwest corner of Manhattan Island on the Hudson River. There stood the Twin Towers, a hotel, and 4 office buildings. The PATH train station underneath the site ended the commute from New Jersey. The attack on the Twin Towers destroyed all of it, leaving 16 acres bare. It was a canvas to which artists were among the first to bring ideas. Some soared higher than the Twin Towers themselves. Many spoke to the values that would guide the rebuilding.
I think the greatest memorial that we could build is a great building.
I really believe that the site needs to be reinvested with life and not just the memory of what happened.
We felt it was important to preserve the footprints of the 2 World Trade Centers as a sacred ground.
Rebuilding at Ground Zero would be difficult. It was unknown whether people would want to work or live on a site where so many lives were lost. A memorial would have to involve everyone affected by the tragedy in an effort to help heal. After such a devastating moment, the greatest challenge was moving forward. In the very depths of the site lay the key to setting the rebuilding in motion. The PATH train station, underneath the World Trade Center, was used by 67,000 people who commuted to Lower Manhattan every day.
The PATH system was a vital link between New Jersey and New York. It was one of the key transit systems coming into the businesses and supporting the whole environment in Lower Manhattan. The return of the PATH system was paramount in terms of bringing some normalcy back to downtown.
So you see this slab hanging down? Go on the other side, and that's the edge of the PATH station mezzanine right behind that.
The PATH is run by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the powerful transportation agency that also owns the World Trade Center site. In its more than 80-year history, the Port Authority has built the world's longest bridge, the world's longest tunnel, and with the Twin Towers, the world's tallest skyscraper. Restoring PATH service was not like these engineering challenges. For Port Authority engineers, this mission was personal.
Well, the PATH tracks turn around and come back over here. They're actually off the edge of the wall by quite.
They come through those columns over there.
This was not a normal site that we were restoring PATH service on.
I don't think they're against that wall all the way.
When you were standing in the middle of this, your senses were just unbelievably overwhelmed with the sight, the sounds, the smells of what was going on. It was something you'll never forget.
Almighty God, we are eternally grateful for the recovery workers who have worked so hard to restore the remains of this loved one to their family. And we ask for your strength and your peace and your comfort.
On 9/11, the Port Authority lost 84 of our own people, including 24 people or so that I knew intimately close, and they were very, very good friends.
That was a hard time for all of us. Many of them lost their lives trying to help people, went back up into the buildings or stayed in the building to try to help people. I said, we're all feeling pretty bad, but we've got to do something. We've got to put the transportation back.
The mission was very, very clear in terms of what needed to be done, but more importantly, why it had to be done.
Sometime around late January, the PATH station actually began to emerge from the rubble and the debris.
This is fairly unstable through here.
It was a monumental task to get down to that level to remove all that material.
Can you see up the ramp here?
Yes. It was 60 to 70 feet down below the surface.
Time was of the essence. The schedule we put together, knowing very little at the time, said we would open the World Trade Center PATH station by the end of the year 2003.
The decision was made that the fastest way to get PATH back into service was to try and just build back on a temporary basis what was there before. We knew that worked. We knew where the tracks connected to the tunnel and how they curved around and where the platforms were.
As the Port Authority raced to revive the PATH commuter system, groundwork began for the first building to rise from ground zero. World Trade Center 7 was the last building to fall on 9/11. Its occupants had time to evacuate safely, so there were no bodies to recover, and the site could be easily cleared. It seemed like the least complicated place to begin rebuilding. New York developer Larry Silverstein had built the original 7 at the northern edge of the site in 1984. Local residents detested the building because it blocked a way to get downtown. They fought for a structure that would reopen the street.
On reflecting about the Trade Center and how it could get rebuilt, I looked at 7, and I looked at it with David Childs because we had selected him to redesign the building. And it became obvious that we couldn't build 7 as it had originally been designed.
This building is this very simple prism that would sit on this site, sitting back, and letting that view corridor stretch all the way through. We redesigned World Trade 7 to allow for the street, the original street, to go through. The steel is now coming up. The skin will be started in short order, and you'll be able to really see the eventual look of the building.
You're inside of the new 7 World Trade Center as it rises above us. Gives me a particularly good feeling.
For 2 years, while 7 was under construction, Silverstein's broker, C.B. Richard Ellis, had been trying to secure tenants.
This is 7 World Trade Center. Originally, if you remember, 7 World Trade Center ended at that corner, and there was a real barrier between what was perceived as a financial district and Tribeca. And the value of the continuation of Greenwich Street is to reconnect the two. Immediately to the west are 2 brand new transportation hubs, and the ferries that service it from New Jersey have become a real commuter opportunity. This floor plan is ideal for almost every type of conventional layout there is.
Silverstein Properties have been trying for 2 years to find tenants for 7 World Trade Center, the first building that will be complete, and it was difficult.
I don't usually take people to the window. Those squares, those are the outline of the original footprints of the 2 towers, and that's where the memorial is going to be built. Oh, okay. And the rest of it is going to be park. Greenwich Street is not constructed yet, but this is what it's going to be right here.
2 years of having one of the best brokerage firms in the world representing your space.
There's a great view of the Empire State Building, especially at night.
And not having anyone really even interested sort of was an indicator to Silverstein that this is a different animal.
To us, it's not as flippant as let's just get a tenant on a floor.
We're kind of leasing out a piece of public consciousness, and that takes a different angle.
Across the Hudson River in New Jersey, Port Authority engineers readied a test run of the PATH train. It would be the first to enter Ground Zero since 9/11.
Hey, John, how are you? The purpose tonight of the work train is basically to verify some clearances. All it is just a bunch of pieces of metal, about 3 inches long, all around it, to give us an idea of what the clearances are.
Completed in 1908, the Hudson River tunnels through which PATH runs are the oldest underwater train tunnels in the nation.
There's 2 tunnels on the PATH system. One comes from under the Hudson River from New Jersey, and one then returns back. As the buildings collapsed, the tunnels acted like big drain pipes. As a result of that flooding, all the communication lines, the power lines, the signal lines and equipment, the track beds themselves, all of that had to eventually be replaced.
Get it?
Maybe not at slow speed, but it's going to catch.
And that's just the bracket, so we can get that shot cleared off the bracket.
Yeah.
Commuters used to step from PATH trains into busy corridors of stores and restaurants. The World Trade Center's basement had housed Lower Manhattan's largest shopping mall.
If you come from Jersey and then come out into the World Trade Center and go into that pit, you can't help but be moved. It's an eerie feeling.
You know, it's interesting, the challenge we face is this notion that it feels dead.
It looks like a graveyard.
It looks like a bad scene.
Everyone is going to have their own sort of emotional reaction to it.
The VIA Group was hired on behalf of Silverstein Properties to bring tenants to 7 World Trade Center.
They have a tangible lease objective.
We are an agency that tries to differentiate itself in the marketplace by solving the toughest marketing, advertising, and branding problems out there. It's a ton of space, I mean, that has to get leased.
Yeah, what dominates the media of it right now is the fact that nothing's happening.
Right.
It's focusing on the negative, and it's missing the fact that there's a lot progressing, so.
And I wonder if there's a way to make it more about the work has started again. It's like, it's real, it's happening, it's now.
We did the research and talked to the potential tenants. There were a number of issues, but first and foremost was fear.
You know, last time I was down there, it is still, you know, this tragedy occurred there, and a lot of the people that were coming in were they just wanted to pay reverence to it.
It's tough for a CEO to say, hey guys, guess what, we're moving, and guess what, we're moving, and everyone's still calling it ground zero.
The CEO, kind of visionary leader, decision maker, what can we do for that person?
We understood it was going to take a very unique type of executive, somebody who wanted to make a statement, somebody who felt that they wanted to say something about their company by being there.
The cosmic landscape is about an enormous controversy that's taking place in physics these days. What are the properties of a region of space?
New York Academy of Sciences is one of the oldest institutions of its kind in the United States that brings people together to learn more about science. This building was built in the early 1900s.
When it comes to convening meetings, which is what the Academy does, we have very small rooms.
Perhaps the universe is tuned to our own existence. What else?
It reminds me of the 19th century when you saw people packed in an auditorium in some French vaudevillian event, people hanging over the balconies. Here you have people stuffed kind of elbow to elbow in one room, and then another group of people sitting in the other room watching on a screen.
That's no good to anybody.
We're constantly running out of space. People are in cubicles that should be in offices and vice versa. This is a very dysfunctional building.
It's back to the same issues that existed the day after it happened.
If it's a product you need to buy or a building you need to lease, what we're trying to do is allow a prospective tenant to sort of place themselves in that environment.
We started with just a very high-level campaign, 2 leaders with vision, your office is ready. Moving into that building, it says that we're a step ahead. It says that we have a mission. And instead of showing the building, which is traditionally what people do in real estate advertising, we showed the view. We did a lot of bus advertising and outdoor, which are typically used for low-level tactical advertising like growing up Gotti or the New York State Lottery. And we wanted to hit the employees who might be moving and say, you know, you're a part of this too.
The Academy going to this space allows us to make the argument that it's not just moving a home to get a functionally better place, but it's a kind of a statement. We were bold. We signed the first lease. We held a party for the staff to give them a feeling that this is a decision that all of us are playing a part in.
People were just like looking around and just wide-eyed. It was like sort of awe. The 7 World Trade Center and the 40th floor is so different than you know, an old mansion on the Upper East Side.
First off, I want to welcome you. This is great to see some tenants. This is really exciting. We all learned a great lesson about high-rise buildings, and the building you're in is the safest high-rise office building probably in the country. I know in the country.
What we learned in 9/11 is steel trusses do not stand up well under intense heat. So we decided to eliminate steel truss construction. We used massive steel beams anchored into the concrete core to provide redundancy, so that if you lose a steel column, the load would get redistributed and the building would continue to stand.
We're making stairwells wider so that firemen can come up while people are going down. We're taking reasonable precautions not to have a design that looks like a culture under siege, but one that is prudent about protecting itself.
I should say something about the historic significance of you guys being the first tenant here. The entire success of the World Trade Center redevelopment depends on leasing 7 World Trade Center. And the entire success of leasing 7 World Trade Center depends on people who perceive themselves as visionaries. You guys truly are leaders with vision.
The building didn't have any tenants really even interested for 2 years while they built the building. And within 3 months of the campaign launching, they've secured 3 tenants.
If workers were ready to return to Ground Zero, the path was ready to get them there.
The accomplishment for us is doing what we do best. To really rebuild this as quickly as we can, to bring back the life that was in Lower Manhattan.
Port Authority engineers celebrated the return of PATH less than 2 years after vowing to rebuild it.
Opening day, I think, is a day of mixed emotions. Had a sense of remembrance, sadness, had a sense of renewal.
The question remains whether the site, once rebuilt, can return to normal, with memories of 9/11 forever present.
The opening at 7 was a very emotional experience, as you can imagine.
Let me welcome you all to 7 World Trade Center.
It was the last building to come down on 9/11, fortunately, without the loss of any life. And here we are, the first building to come back up.
People have said, maybe, Larry, you shouldn't build that building until you have all your leases in it. Maybe you shouldn't go forward. But he did. And it's going to be filled, and it's going to be filled soon, because Larry will not fail.
Please welcome to the stage, Citizen Cope.
Thank you. You know it ain't easy for this all to leave me. There are words to describe it in Spanish or in English. The diamonds ain't fake.
I thought it was kind of eerie when I first came up here because this was actually the first time I actually been to the site since it happened.
When he was talking about the building and the structure, I had to remind myself there was only 40 stories and that most likely we won't be prone to the same kind of traumatic event that took place at the World Trade Center towers.
But you also have to think that, because otherwise how would you come to work every day?
You have to go about your daily life, but living and working around here, you'll never forget it.
Oh, boy. Wow.
These feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways.
There are many people that won't want to move back.
At some point, it's going to be, this is the vision of the company you work for, and employees have a choice as to whether they want to follow that mission or not.
A couple of weeks ago, I had occasion to see some family that I hadn't seen in a long time, and when I started to tell them we were the first tenants to sign a lease at 7 World Trade Center, I got a round of applause from like everybody at the table because they just thought it was like, well, somebody's got to go down there, so good for you guys.
While the buildings and the PATH station were the responsibility of Silverstein and the Port Authority, the memorial to victims of 9/11 was entrusted to the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation.
After September 11th, I went to the newly appointed chairman and said, if I can be of assistance, please let me know. And he, in essence, stated, that's a wonderful offer. How about tomorrow full time? So that's how I became their first employee. My apartment is a block from ground zero. So for me, the rebuilding isn't just a professional undertaking. It's about ensuring that my neighborhood is rebuilt.
This is the first public meeting where we are anxiously awaiting to hear from you.
And we've got two important agendas: rebuilding Lower Manhattan, creating a memorial.
We've had well over 100 public meetings to help determine the principles that we should carry out as we rebuild.
You know, one of the things about the memorial is it needs to be representative of what was there, not just the individuals, but also what the towers had.
You know, it's not just a site for appreciation, but it is a historical site.
We've had small sessions with individual family members, with residents, transportation experts, on and on and on.
There are no staircases to get people down.
And the shrine is an excellent idea because it will never change.
Those images flashing onto projected space.
It's very hard to build consensus, and so that makes it challenging to try and find the right path.
Are you going to remove some part and say, okay, maybe we have 700 bodies here, so we're like...
or attacking.
I doubt that there's ever been such a public process around an architectural endeavor.
In April 2003, the LMDC launched an international competition to select the memorial design. It received more than 5,000 entries from 64 countries, the largest response to a design competition ever. The entries were whittled down to 8 finalists. The urgency to decide on a winning design increased with the number of people who visited Ground Zero every day with nothing to guide them.
People feel that they need to come here and try to understand what happened that day. There are some self-proclaimed speakers that are down there that most of the information is not accurate. There's a lot of hawking going on. When they do come, they look through that fence and they really don't understand. It became obvious that there was going to be a need to fill a gap between now and when the memorial is completed at the World Trade Center site.
How are you?
I'm Dan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My organization, September 11th Families Association, felt we needed to have guided walks around the site.
Have a seat anywhere.
Thanks. Who better to express the events of 9/11 than people that lived it in one way or another? We have rescue workers that spent, in some cases, 9 months at the site. Survivors who made it out of the building.
I must have been right behind you.
Really?
Yeah. A mom who maybe lost her son.
I'm going to muddle along. I may cry a lot, and I hope I can learn all my lines and everything, but I really want to do this.
Come right up to the edge. Everybody just come as close as you can to the edge. So we're looking at the site.
We felt early on that this was going to be therapeutic for the guides, the docents. We didn't realize how therapeutic it was going to be. How do you not become emotional looking at this site, especially after losing a loved one?
1% of the folks that we surveyed come from other countries.
When I got off the train yesterday, it was the first time that I'd ever been to the site alone. You know, gone down with family members, and it was a little strange yesterday.
When I got up to the window, just everything kind of like poured out of me, and I think I've been keeping a lot bottled up. Yesterday, by the time I left here, I stayed in the city at a friend's house. I had to have 2 B&Bs, and then, you know, I just kind of sort through all my feelings and get it all out.
We have professional people on staff that are here to help if help is needed.
There is something that not everybody experiences, but some do. It's called survivor guilt. And this is one way of dealing with it, is to tell the story.
I'm hoping that maybe, you know, seeing visitors come down and show an interest will really be something that brings me a lot of peace.
To make the connection with a visitor, to explain to them their story, who better to give that to these visitors and for them to take that back to where they live?
Good morning and welcome to the Tadpole. A beautiful day is in store for the Phillipsburg area with sunny skies, highs expected in the mid-70s. We're looking for rain this evening. Today we're going to take a look at the ethanol plant.
My name is Ross Bugby. I'm 17 years old and I go to Phillipsburg High School.
I'm Rebecca Zillinger and I'm 17 and I go to Phillipsburg High School. It's pretty boring here. There's not much to do.
We play a form of ping pong called sting pong.
Damn it.
Right now is when the cows have their babies. I just jump on the four-wheeler and check them real quick. If it's a nice day, I'll just call Grandpa up and say, Grandpa, I want to ride some horses.
Every year, juniors and seniors at Phillipsburg High School take a much-anticipated bus trip to New York City.
I've never been to New York.
Dallas, Texas is the biggest city I've been to.
All of the people that went last year, they said that they'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning and people would be walking around in the streets.
I have an older sister, and she said you never see the sun because buildings are just so tall.
I expect there's going to be way more people than I've ever seen in my life.
For almost 30 years, I've been taking the children to New York, and I will tell you, our student groups were some of the first ones to return to the World Trade Center. I think you know that we are approaching the 5th anniversary of 9/11, probably one of the most tragic events in American history. We're going to look at some of the videos that we have. But now we're dealing with people who never knew what the World Trade Center stood for, really didn't know what the Twin Towers were all about.
On 9/11, I was a 7th grader, and I was in my history class.
And 6 were left standing.
My dad flies for American Airlines. I knew that he'd been flying that day. And then I got called to the office.
World Trade Center 7 fell after burning for 7.
My grandma had called and told him that my dad was fine. Most people in Phillipsburg didn't really understand like the full effect of all of it.
I think it's kind of hard to be sad in a way because you really don't see the trauma that had happened there earlier. It's all been wiped clean of everything.
I usually don't cry, actually. And the World Trade Center, I knew it was a big deal, but I've never been there.
We come together today to view the result of an unprecedented process, the creation of a fitting memorial.
I'd like to thank the jury members for having confidence in me and selecting my design.
Finding out that my memorial design was selected was a very, in a strange way, nerve-wracking moment.
It is a very difficult task I've been entrusted with, and I will do my best to rise to this occasion.
It's an enormous responsibility to take on.
I understand just how important this memorial is to so many people. What happened on September 11th influenced me greatly, and my personal sense of grief and loss led me to submit this memorial design.
34-year-old Michael Arad's design included 2 waterfall fountains symbolizing the Twin Towers. His essential idea was that visitors would descend to the base of the fountains below street level, where they would view the names of those killed on low stone walls.
You come out of the dense streetscape of Lower Manhattan to a quiet contemplative space below ground. And it is here, at the very edge of this enormous pool, that the most emotional moment within a visit will occur, because here it is where you're confronted with the hundreds of names. It's a moment where you actually cannot ignore what is in front of you.
The fountains are each 3/4 of an acre. Certainly one of the largest fountains ever done internationally. We built this full-scale mock-up that was 27 feet tall to really test the lighting, the acoustics, the materials.
I began with, a sketch on a piece of paper in my apartment. And it's gone from that to drawing sets with hundreds of drawings, and then with detailed dimensions and materials and methods of construction.
You come down the escalator and you arrive here.
The LMDC expanded the underground site plan to include a 9/11 museum built below and around the memorial. Dozens of engineers and architects set out to bring the project to life.
Michael's suggestion was to rotate it and put it in the lower right corner of the family room.
The complexities that surround the engineering of the slurry wall haven't yet been solved, so how much of
But it gives you a range of color.
Because the fingerprints are all over just like that.
When you begin a process like this, you don't think about what type of handle you're going to put on a door, what type of light switch you're going to put on a wall.
All of the other toilets are stone.
Right.
But what do we do about the visual sensors that are used now?
That's a good question.
As plans for the memorial moved forward, some saw problems.
The memorial itself, the way it's been designed, destroys the actual authentic remnants of the Twin Tower footprints, which are 7 stories below ground. They're converting the footprint remnants into a basement. This is the footprint of the South Tower. This is the footprint of the North Tower. And each one of these dots represents where remains were found.
For years to come, when people come to New York, one of the things they will want to see is where the tower stood. To walk on the actual site where the tower stood. This is the One World Trade Center footprint. These are the perimeter columns. And the core columns are here. You can see these are core column bases. When you look at it, it doesn't look like a building. It's a remnant, but you feel the history. When you look at the steel, you see it sort of melted where it was cut off with torches. And when you look at the concrete slabs, it's very evocative, like visiting a site like Gettysburg or walking on the beach at Normandy. And below your feet are the unrecovered remains of thousands of people who died there.
There's an interesting dispute to be had over whether you're preserving the right thing. The concrete slab, it's really the sub-basement level of the Twin Towers. Very few human beings ever accessed that area. Michael Arad's design with the twin reflecting pools, it lets you know precisely where the towers stood. It shows you the size of those footprints. It's at its very essence about the footprints.
Arad thought that by placing the victims' names 30 feet below ground, the solitude would ease contemplation. Others disagreed.
Would you like to sign our petition?
It's going to be under street level. The memorial for 9/11 is going to be under street level.
That's insane.
People were not aware that the names would be at the base of these waterfalls. People would be actually going in underground to view the names.
Why don't we walk down? Because we'll show you.
Subway area? I had never really thought about before that there will be a train going through there. There will be rumblings.
Hear the trains? You're going to hear that at the memorial.
What about the vibration of the train? You're in there and you feel a tremor. That's not... I noticed that their renderings only had 2 to, say, 30 people at the memorial. This underground confined space. That's far from the numbers that we'll be actually visiting. They'll be in the thousands. You're going to look at the name and you're going to feel the crowd behind you and you're going to leave.
Father God, we thank you for the blessings you bestowed upon us. You know the reason that we're here. Give these family members what they're asking for, that they may be able to come here and remember them in the light of day, not having to go underground, not having to be in the dark. Amen.
Those folks that come here don't know. They don't realize. They're looking through a fence. They have no idea of what they're looking at. There's nobody there to explain to them. You are going to be that conduit. You are going to be the folks that are going to explain the events of September 11th.
I've never really talked to anybody that was there.
Never really come in contact with anyone who's lost anyone in 9/11.
As I look at them, they're all happy-go-lucky, they're all smiling, rightfully so, because we live in a beautiful country. And then I say to myself in that split second, now I'm going to talk to them a little bit and make them realize how dangerous this world has become.
We're going to have to stay real close. Come in real close.
Real close so that you can hear later.
Come real close, okay, so that we can hear.
I've learned through reading on how to become a good speaker that you have to capture your audience.
I was in these buildings many, many, many times. I still have trouble when I tell you how to understand what the size of these buildings were. See this building? The black building?
Yeah.
54 stories high. Double that.
Oh, my God.
Double that building. That makes up only one tower.
I now have a captured audience.
Oh, my goodness.
It's going to make you think about something.
Coming from a town where the tallest building is about 4 stories high, it's really amazing to think of something that tall.
We then go into that walkway. We go in. We stop at that window. You're going to be talking about some of the, well, you're going to be talking a lot about the horribleness of this site. The booklet you have will explain some of the figures. I will give you some real quick. This site here, 2,749 folks were murdered. And I said murdered. 2,749.
By telling facts, not sugarcoating anything, it's a way of conveying the message of what intolerance and ignorance did.
As the buildings came down, they compressed floor on floor. When you compress something like this, the air goes to the weakest point. So it goes this way, and it hits this. The windows get blown out. On the way down, the floors compressed very quickly. It took anywhere from 8 to 10 seconds to come down and wind up to be a pile 6 stories high.
I could kind of visualize all the people running around, just the mass chaos that was there. Earlier I'd said that it probably wouldn't feel much, but just visualizing that, it was really, really touching.
I want you to know that when we talk out here, I cry every time I speak, because it's difficult to talk about somebody you've lost without having a tear. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
It has an effect on me every single solitary time. I get a chance to speak about my best friend, my son.
My son, Jonathan, New York City firefighter, was working. The plane hit doing 590. and pieces came out the other side, along with souls that came out the other side. And he was probably hit by something that was flying through the air. Yeah, I have to stop every now and then because you can tell I'm going to... He called me that morning to let me know about the site. I said, be careful. He said, okay, Dad, I will. That's the last time I spoke to my son.
When he was talking about his son, I was thinking about what if my mom or my sister or somebody was in there and they were the ones that nobody could find. And it just, I couldn't even imagine what it would be like.
It makes me say that I'm making them cry, but what better way to explain to people what happened here?
We then continue down to what is the Amex Memorial. It's a beautiful memorial to 11 people that died from American Express, Amex. And that's where we end our tour.
They may forget my name, maybe my son's name,
I get to kiss her.
but they won't forget the guy that spoke to them about that horrible day.
Somebody will ask about the firehouse.
I like to think that when the time comes, we'll be able to transition our walking tours right into the visitor center that'll be established at the memorial itself.
The city does not have a memorial yet. And for me, what we will be doing, this really is a memorial to those lost. And I think that it's a perfect one.
I want to capture you now. So I said, let me explain something to you. See this building right here? Double that building. You now have a captive audience.
That's just great that I get to experience firsthand someone that was actually there when it happened. Maybe I'll be able to go back and tell the same story. Maybe not as good, but just to pass it on.
Good morning. Mainly, I'd just like to add my thanks on behalf of the LMDC to be out there in the location of the future memorial with equipment whirring. The predominant sentiment was one of pride.
We have marshaled the public input.
We were keenly aware of the fact that while we were breaking ground, some individuals were preparing to protest.
By moving forward with plans for a flawed 9/11 memorial, LMDC and the Port Authority have now officially dishonored the memory of the 9/11 dead.
There is absolutely no question what needs to be done here.
Don't allow a memorial to be underground.
They're now going to pour concrete over where my son was. This is no way.
The symbolism of going down is wrong here. My brother was going up to rescue, to save life.
Sean was my only sibling. He was my younger brother.
I look up into the sky when I think of him.
It's very hard for people to come out and be activists. It's when it's because of the loss of a loved one.
In the light of the day, they want to rub their hands across the names of those who died here.
When we go out and we speak publicly, we feel that our loved ones are helping us and getting us through what we need to do.
But within this space, there are larger, massive concrete
I feel my brother Harvey giving us strength.
foundations of the towers and massive steel core column remnants.
Shortly after the LMDC broke ground on the memorial, the budget to finish construction was revealed to be $1 billion, doubling earlier estimates. External committees pored over plans to cut the costliest elements of the design. One was the meditative space underground. The modification struck at the heart of Michael Arad's original vision, to isolate the victims' names from the commotion of the city. Though a small victory for protesters, the revised plans still partly cover the tower's footprints.
I don't think that any one design could answer everybody's wishes. And this must be, above all, a democratic memorial. But the perils of doing something like that are that those with the loudest voice might rule the day.
Over the past 4.5 years, there's been enough sentiment, pro and con, on everything we've done that we've grown thick-skinned. You can accommodate public opinion up to a given point, and at some point you need to decide to build.
The Port Authority selected world-renowned Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava to design the PATH train station that will replace the temporary one. Already in its initial phases of construction, its two great canopies of steel and glass are to resemble a bird poised for flight. To its northwest will stand the Freedom Tower, the world's tallest skyscraper. Like Seven, it will be a collaboration of Larry Silverstein and David Childs. But the Port Authority will own the building and find tenants. Ground was broken in April 2006. Everything, including the memorial, is scheduled to be completed by 2011.
There's a lot of work ahead of us, literally billions of dollars of construction ahead of us in the next 5 to 6 years.
You must align everybody in the same direction to bring the World Trade Center back to its heyday that I remember so well prior to 9/11. I would love to see that happen once again.
I do have hope that there will be a memorial that inspires and that will be bringing peace to Ground Zero.
My sense is that this will be the most exciting new place to visit, to work in, and to live in. Yes, you can't forget what did transpire down here on 9/11. But you must move forward with life, because life is to be lived.
If you want to learn more about the continuing work at Ground Zero and explore the building of memorials around the world, visit the America Rebuilds website at pbs.org.